Guns and Roses.
Over at the New Mexico restaurant. For Family Promise. And it was great fun to see the sheriff there.
Yeah.
No, it's not the sheriff. I think it was the
Chief of Police.
Oh, for Lincoln City.
And then Jim Cruz for the fire department.
Yeah.
They were waiting
Guns and
tables.
Roses, it was just,
They were doing a great job waiting tables.
Good. I think well, it depends on which clock you're using. That one, you got a few more minutes. I don't mind if we wait just a couple more. Well, while we're waiting to see if there's a few more folks that want to come in, just a couple things that are on the table. We do have our new 2016 emergency preparedness calendars, which are pretty great. Has all of your public safety information on the back, contact numbers, websites, and then each month has a different emergency preparedness topic, so that's kind of good. And this will be one of the best guides I'll talk about in the presentation. He's like, I want my calendar, I don't want you to run out. And I'll reference this document during the presentation. Yep, it's the Living on Shaky Ground. This is probably the best read out of all the material that I could offer to you. So, and it's also online. So if you have friends that say, hey, where'd you get that? If they have access to the internet and they like to use it, then you can find this online through Oregon Emergency Management. We have other examples of things that are up here I'll talk about. We have some of the Lincoln City North, Lincoln City South tsunami evacuation maps. The severe event training, Are You Ready? This is done through your local fire departments. And we didn't realize we brought the South County ones. So Jim Coos from North Lincoln Fire has the one for the north end of the county. And this is a kit that we put together, our volunteer put together for us. This would be an example of a kit that you would use if you needed to evacuate your home, or if you live in the inundation area and you have friends in high places, that you leave your emergency readiness kit, your family kit, at their house. This would be the type of things that you would think about wanting to put in there. Sort of an all-inclusive, need to get by for a longer period of time and has more home creature comforts. This is your traditional American Red Cross type 1-person adult 3-day kit. It's got some extra items in there. We've looked around, and I will tell you your local vendor, Bruce Polvey from the Electronic Superstore, has a lot of comparable items. But because this is a nonprofit entity and they give back to the community and it's simple to direct people, this is the one we put out on display. But by no means do we say this is the kit. This is another example of like a household type kit or maybe a business or office kit because it's more durable, it's more industrial because you have things like a flat bar, gloves, there's a utility shut-off tool that's in there. And also, if you notice, it has a toilet seat on top, so there's a purpose for that. And then they all have some type of long-term food ration type bars. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but when you're looking for these, make sure they have a long shelf life, at least 5 years, low in sodium, and the best thing to look for, it will say U.S. Coast Guard approved. So if you're an online shopper and you find something dirt cheap on eBay, there might be a reason for that. So look for that. And the other thing, any product that you use for your disaster supply cache, you want to make sure that it's low in sodium. Anything high in sodium might be quick to process, but it's going to make you more thirsty and require you to drink more water. So that's why these are good. They're non-thirst provoking. Okay. Do you want to start, Mark? I think we're probably pretty good.
Okay, my name is Mark Nicholson. I'm the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for Lincoln City.
Oh, you're going to be directed to the mic. You have to start over.
I want people at home to hear you.
Yes. Hello? Hello? Okay. My name is Mark Nicholson. I'm the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for the City of Lincoln City. So I live down the hall. I'm not really taking part in this. I'm just part of Jenny's groupie club. But I'll just introduce, this is Jenny Damaris. She's the County Emergency Manager. And whenever we get in trouble, whenever we need to request resources, that type of thing, we go through the county. The county goes to the state, et cetera, and eventually you end up at FEMA, and you're all very aware of that. Anyway, I wasn't going to say any more. Jenny, go to it. If you want to ask questions, that's why I'm holding this, and we'll get it around to you. You can ask something.
And I'll repeat the question for the camera. So they are recording our presentation tonight. So if any of you have a reason to not be on film or live television, you might want to move to this side. There you go. He's got his hoodie up. All right, he's good. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank each of you for taking time out of your life to attend this presentation tonight. And obviously, thank you to our facility host, the City of Lincoln City. We're actually going to be doing a ramp up of these type of presentations across the county. We started in our two largest cities, Newport and Lincoln City. So next week, tell your friends and family, we'll be back. We'll be down in Lincoln City next week on Tuesday. Oh yeah, there we go. I'm from Eddyville, so I'm East County. Yeah. Okay, so tomorrow, Friday, we will be at the North Lincoln Fire Station in Taft at 1:30 to do the same presentation. Then next week on Tuesday, we'll go to the Newport City Hall, and we're doing a presentation for them from 3 to 5:30, and then again from 6 to 7:30. And then as we progress at the end of the year and into the spring, the smaller communities will have an opportunity and we'll host the same presentation for them. So, again, I'm Jenny Damaris, your County Emergency Manager. I have the privilege of working under the direction of your Sheriff, Dennis Dotson. Hopefully many of you are aware of our Sheriff's Office and our leadership. They empower me to have an opportunity to gain in knowledge and information and present this to you, and then collaborate with our partners so that we all speak with one message. So, why are we here today? I want to talk to you about the Cascadia subduction zone, and I want to talk to you about your personal and family readiness and give you an opportunity as a citizen, a business owner, as a community member to be able to ask questions of us in your city leadership if we haven't been able to provide that information to you, or just make sure that all of your needs have been met. Okay, so a couple of different reference points I want to lead you to. People always ask us, well, how do we know you're true? How do we know that information you keep telling us? How do we know the New Yorker is really so accurate? And I'm referring to the New Yorker magazine article that was out, I guess it's been a couple of months now. So I like to do a poll of hands. How many of you read the New Yorker magazine? Okay. How many of you really didn't give Cascadia much thought until after the New Yorker magazine was published or it reached the national news level? So okay, a few. They're honest people. Hit the national news, and then we were like, oh, maybe we better pay attention. Okay. So a couple of documents here. One, the USGS here, the map. The interesting fact about this, you have to keep in mind, put it into perspective, Oregon is still very young in earthquake years. And by that, I mean, if you look at our building code standards, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and the acknowledgement in the science and geography about our earthquake status, we're still really young. We're not into this that long. California, absolutely, we know they've been earthquake country for hundreds of years. But Oregon? Not really. Well, now, this is the most recent earthquake map, and if you notice the super dark purple, hot pink zone, we finally made it to the hot side. That is the highest level of earthquake rating in the nation. So if you were to go back 40 or 50 years ago, we'd probably be in this light orange, maybe a yellow color. But then with the science, technology, soil samples, the great work that's been done by many geologists, we are now at ground zero. That's us. We're there. So the other thing I want to reference to you is the Oregon Resilience Plan. This was a group of individuals, emergency management professionals, policy group, scientists. They didn't feel that government was pushing this emphasis along, and they wanted to really bring that to the forefront. So this group of individuals prepared this report. It's quite lengthy. It's available to you online through Oregon Emergency Management. And I would encourage you to filter through it if you have time. This document is referenced as a 50-year plan. When they went through and did all the evaluation focusing on public infrastructure for the state of Oregon down to the local level, What they realized is it would take 50 years for us to even begin to develop a plan, and not considering the amount of money that it would take, to put a plan in place to mitigate the effects of what Cascadia will do to us here locally. So, great read, available to you, and more work is being done. There's now a push to do the same methodology on what will happen to us from a human standpoint. So, a human and social standpoint, how do we prepare ourselves? And in my presentation, you'll see some additional slides that we talk about that. Okay, so emergency management, we try our hardest to speak with one message across our counties, our cities, our jurisdictions, our profession. So I'm actually going to switch over to this other presentation done by Oregon Emergency Management, Althea Rizzo. She is our earthquake guru with Oregon Emergency Management, and she has a full-time job to do nothing but earthquake and tsunami preparedness, so we will benefit from her slides. So why are we here? Why are we talking about earthquakes and tsunamis? We're going to get from here to there. What we find, and Carrie, my counterpart who's here, Carrie DeLisser, we have found probably over the last 18 months that we've been categorizing our community members into different categories. So one group is those that live in a state of denial. Absolutely not, don't care, don't want to hear about it, or due to economic challenges in their lives, they have no capability whatsoever to even begin to prepare or to make that a prioritization in their life. The other group of individuals we have are those that Carrie actually dubbed the wait and see folks. That's pretty comfortable too. I'm going to wait and see. I'm not really sure. I've heard about these new things that are going to happen, new policies, new procedures, new information, new science, but how does it really pan out? It hasn't affected me. So I'm going to wait and see how things shake out. Now, you can live in either state of mind. It's your choice. However, if you choose to continue to live in a state of denial and a catastrophic event or even a moderate event happens, will you have the preparedness tools in your toolkit to take care of yourself and your family? Do you expect your neighbors, your other community members, to meet that need for you? If you're the wait and see group, sometimes you have some things that are ready to go, but maybe not as much as you really should. But once again, if the event happens and you waited to see, to find out what happens, and your toolkit is empty, who will you get your food from? Who will be willing to help you when you sat side by side with me, or next door to me, or had your business next to me, and you chose to wait and see? Is it the good of me to share all of my resources with you because you chose not to prepare? What is your personal resiliency? How do you sustain yourself and your family? And that's what this presentation is really intended to do, to take those that hear the message and encourage you and entice you to be responsible for yourself and increase that personal resiliency. Okay, so what are our geological hazards in Oregon? This is pretty simple. We know we have earthquakes. We are now fairly familiar with tsunamis. And of course, don't forget the sleeping giants, volcanoes, although they don't tend to happen nearly as frequently or in the news that we've been seeing of late. Okay, so there's just some pictures. We also have drought conditions. The East Coast has hurricanes. We have winter storms. I think we feel sometimes they're pretty much the same. We have coastal cracks. So we know Highway 101 as you drive it from Lincoln City to Newport, right? It's the whoop-de-doos as we go through. And ODOT, apologizes every year. We're sorry you have these whoop-de-doo driving conditions, but that's the lay of the land. We live at the edge of our continent. That's referred to as a coastal crack. What is it, Carrie? We do this every time. Anyway, so that's a naturally occurring process. It's a coastal, what's it called? Oh, now we've stumped us both. It will come to us. Okay, anyways, landslides, flooding, what is it? Well, that's subduction. Yeah, that's different. Crustal cracks, thank you. So a crustal crack is the natural occurring process of the top layer of our geology that is cracking and sloughing off. You can't do anything about it. That's just the natural way that land changes. Okay, so what is the Cascadia subduction zone? It is actually two plates, two separate continents coming together, one on top of the other. And so what happens is they're growing and growing and moving and moving. Eventually, they have to release energy. So what you actually see happening is one continent, the top one, will actually pop up like this and then pop back down. And that motion that occurs is what is the release of the energy that we feel as an earthquake. And so when that continent actually pops up like this, what happens from there is the entire water on the ocean floor lifts up with it. So just like when you throw a rock into a stream or a lake and you see the ripples of water, you've changed the surface of that water and the energy has to go somewhere. So when that momentum occurs, those of us that are here locally on the coastline, right here, we receive that local tsunami because the water is coming towards our shore. The other individuals away from that fault line over here in Japan or Hawaii or any of those other continents, they're the ones that receive the distant tsunami. So depending on what side of the earthquake fault line you're on will determine whether you get a local tsunami or a distant tsunami. Okay, so our Cascadia subduction zone is 600 miles long from Northern California to British Columbia. It is capable of producing very large earthquakes of magnitude 9 plus. It is similar in size and impact to the 2004 Sumatra earthquake. It can and will produce devastating tsunamis. We've seen that. We have the history. And then people always ask us, well, when is it going to happen? That's what we're here to find out. When is it going to happen? Well, if you go by the law of average, there's a 37% chance of a megathrust earthquake in the next 50 years. Well, how do we know that? We just don't know when it will occur. It's all based on when it chooses to release energy. But reoccurrence, south of Cape Blanco was 240 years ago. The entire length of Cascadia unzipped between 500 and 600 years ago. And on average, there's 190 to 1,200 years between each earthquake. And I have a better diagram to show you. But I talked with our good folks at the Department of Geology and Minerals, DGAMI, just last week because I just wanted to refresh myself on a few things. And I was talking to them about, audiences tend to ask me questions about the comparison of a Californian earthquake, because many of you may have relocated from California to Oregon. And they're, well, I've been through the earthquake. I was through the Loma Prieta. I survived this. I was part of that. And this is how they put it in perspective. Because our range is so long, and we refer to it as unzipping, because the earthquake could start in the center and go both directions. It could start here, which is it's more likely that it actually unzips down here in the southern part. Because it's so long and so intense, it really is of no comparison to the earthquakes that they have in California. So what they said was, if you were to take a bag of M&Ms and you take one M&M and you put it on the counter, that would be the equivalent of the types of earthquakes that they traditionally have in California, even their largest earthquakes, most devastating. Now you take the rest of that bag of M&Ms and pour it on the table, the same surface, and that's the difference. All of those M&Ms put together of the same intensity of those Californian earthquakes would equal our Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. So here's the reason why. So our earthquake fault line is like this, and it pops up and releases that energy. Most of those fault lines in California are the slip strike ones that go back and forth like this. They have a shorter duration. They release energy more frequently. But it's a different type of earthquake, because when you pop up like this, but you're pop, 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 in one continuous moment for 600 miles. That's the difference, right? So once again, I'm not trying to give you a presentation on doomsday or the world's coming to an end. What we're trying to do is take those that are in the wait and see or in a form of denial, and we want to move you over to the aware and prepared side. So you are better informed. you're more likely to take those steps for your personal preparedness. We don't want you to be afraid. There's nothing we can do about this. We don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, the rest of your lifetime, my children's lifetime. But look at Japan. Did any of us think the day before their earthquake happened that it would actually occur the next day? They're the most prepared earthquake country in the world, and it still happened. And people ask, well, why was it still so devastating to them? They had that giant seawall. The things I'm going to talk to you about, one of the things, and it seems, how could someone not think about this, but they didn't take into account the coastal subsidence. So what that means is this particular plate that we're on, like this one here, what's going to happen, this is going to drop between 6 to 15 feet. Their seawall was built to withstand a tsunami at a certain amount, which was probably fine. But what they didn't take into consideration is their continent was going to actually drop. So when that occurred, at the moment that the earthquakes happened, that lowered the actual GPS reading elevation of their seawall. So we too will have the same expectation. We expect between a 6 to 15 foot. Now you may not feel it, you may not realize. The only way you're really going to tell that coastal subsidence is us as a human is when you're standing at sea level, normal sea level, and now you're like, well, wait a minute, why is it way up here? If you go to Blodgett or Corvallis or on your way up to the Cascades, you're not going to be able to tell it's any different because the entire continent is, you're only going to be able to notice it at sea level. The sea level will be much higher. Well, the sea didn't rise, the continent went down. Okay, so this is the science behind how do we know how often it's going to occur. So if you take every red dark line, all the way from 8,000 BC all the way up to 2,000, our time, that is an earthquake of a magnitude 9 plus that breaks along the entire subduction zone. The slightly thinner lines is an 8 plus, and that fault breaks along the southern half of the subduction zone. But either way, here's the information. And people will say to us, well, how do we know that's really true? I believe it as a professional. I've met the scientists, I've talked to them, I've heard the information, I've seen the results, I've read the reports. How this came about was soil sampling that they did along the entire subduction zone. The way that they matched up their estimations of when those earthquakes and the magnitude occurred was a couple of different ways. Native American history here locally on our continent validated many of those points, but wasn't necessarily as documented. If you go over to the Japanese culture, they are very meticulous in their documentation of their natural events. And you can compare these type of large-scale local events for us to their distant tsunami events that they received. Because they would have records of no ground shaking, but the ocean washed out and came back in as a tsunami to them. And by their, you've seen on the TV photographs where they show the tsunami markers in their community of when where they've reached previously, those records matched up with these. Yes? So I have not had any of the geologists that we work with actually say, because some people, the rumor or the myth is, well, we're releasing a little bit of energy at a time, we're releasing a little bit, so that's taking the pressure off, and that's not really the case. When it's ready to go, it's going to go. So it's not like a pressure cooker. You change the dial and the pressure gets less, the pressure gets more. It's not.
What's the distance from Lincoln City to the subduction zone?
I couldn't tell you that without looking at an actual geological map, but it doesn't really matter. So let me keep going, and I think I can answer where you're going. Okay, so what happens during a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake? Well, we know we're going to have strong shaking and a tsunami. We know that we should expect a 9.0 or greater magnitude. We know we're going to have a continued 4 to 6 minutes of continued shaking. And we know to expect a tsunami within 15 to 25 minutes. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple more slides. Okay, so strong ground shaking. We know Malala High School in 93. This is Christchurch, New Zealand in 2011, the Tohoku earthquake in 2011, and Haiti. Now, a couple of different things to point out real quickly. If you look at the economic background of those countries, that's why in Haiti you visually saw much more damage, because their building standards are literally at a third world country. So you visually saw more damage, but regardless, they still shook. Okay, people tend to ask us, well, what's the difference of one magnitude to the next? Does it really matter if you have a 5.0 or a 4.0 clear up to an 8? So how the earthquake in Japan compares with the magnitude of other notable earthquakes. At each step up the magnitude scale, earthquakes are 10 times more powerful than the magnitude right before it. So when you have an 8 here, and you jump up to a 9 or even an 8.9, it's 10 times more powerful. And that's why it's important in the next couple of slides when we talk about aftershocks to keep that perspective. So here's the New Zealand one here in 2011, and then Haiti in 2010 at a 7.0, and then here's our Japan in 8.9, and then the Sumatra one at a 9.1. Okay, well, what do the magnitudes actually mean? What's the point of reference? How do I know what to expect? So if we go, and I'm going to point this out intentionally, a 5 is a strong earthquake felt by all. People walk unsteadily, many frightened, windows crack, plaster, adobe buildings, and some poorly built masonry buildings are cracked. Okay, well, let's jump up a little bit farther. How about 6.5? That's still quite a few degrees difference. General panic, damage to masonry buildings ranges from collapse to serious wood frame structures, and if not bolted, shifted off foundations, underground pipes broken. That's about a 6.5, and they're labeling that as a violent. Well, you'll notice all the way down here at the bottom, catastrophic at an 8, damage nearly total. And once again, I don't give you this information to be doomsdayer. We're providing you with the planning information that we use. The 9 is not even on this chart. When this original graphic was put together, 9 wasn't even a consideration. We would never have a 9. The Pacific Northwest in the United States? Oh, heavens, no. We don't need a 9. Well, that's how times and information science changes, especially when you have sister countries such as Japan and the Chilean earthquakes and the Sumatra earthquake. We're like, whoa, that is real. So this is not intentional. It just was never put on that degree of mapping. So I want you to keep this in mind, because now we're going to talk about aftershocks. So here, this is a picture, and I think because I changed computers, it doesn't repopulate. But here, this would show you a whole sequencing of aftershocks that take place. And the point I want to make to you is, in your planning efforts, you have to be realistic about what you're going to be able to, how you're going to be able to take care of yourself directly following this earthquake. If you survived the earthquake in your house or your building or the structure, the library, this building seems to be somewhat functional. Whew, we made it, we're safe. Now you need to prepare yourself for the aftershocks. Japan had over 153 aftershocks with an average of a 5.0, but some went clear up to a 7 in 48 hours. 153 in 48 hours. The reason why I tell you the significance, importance of this, if you look at the climate that we live in, it's most generally wet and cold. If you have to leave your house directly after the large earthquake and you survive, you're not going to want to stay in your house until you can validate it's still safe, it's secure, And then when those aftershocks start happening, you're not going to want to be in that building. You're going to have to take shelter outside of those structures until you feel like it's okay to go back in. There will not be a building assessor. There will not be a policy group. Your mayor, your city council members, the governor is not going to come to your house and tell you it's okay to go back into your house. You will have to make that decision on your own. Have a tent and have tarps. I will reiterate that again. Okay, so I show this back to you again because if you're having 5 to 7 aftershocks magnitude and your building is already partially damaged or has taken a big beating, you need to be prepared for that. Something that's a little bit to our benefit is most of our structures are wood framed. They can absorb more energy than other types of buildings, especially like in Haiti or other locations that are built of, adobe type material and plaster. So that's sort of a good thing for us. However, there's some downsides. So shaking intensity, if you're interested, you could go to Oregon Department of Geology, and they have some shaking intensity maps that will show you specific areas and how intense they think the shaking will be based on the soil conditions in those geographical areas. However, I will tell you from my understanding, no matter where you are, it's still going to feel very, very intense to you, especially if you have no point of reference. But the value of perhaps looking at this ahead of time is determining, is your area one of those areas that's going to turn into liquefaction? So,
okay, so I guess my question is, we've been talking about the shaking. What about the water that's going to come in? We're going there?
We're getting there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm saving the best for last. Okay, so, and the point that this gentleman made is, well, I want to get to the tsunami part, but what I'm trying to emphasize to you, there's like 6 different events that either occur because of the earthquake or really considered part of it. So you have the initial earthquake, then you're going to have the aftershocks, you're going to have liquefaction that takes place during all of those shaking opportunities, if you will, and that's the process where that type of soil liquefies during shaking. So obviously sand fill is going to be those particular areas. But there's other types of soil samples that do that. Even in the valley, they have many, many places where they anticipate it will liquefy. Once the shaking stops, like you can see here with this van, it will sink into that sinkhole, but then it solidifies again. It just goes, whoop, and that's why you see these funky buildings and trees and cars just stuck. It's because it's solidified again. So this is another event that's going to take place during the shaking. The other one is going to be landslides. Not just because we have a water-saturated soil, but literally you're shaking every soil area, high and low, in our entire Pacific Northwest region. We already know we have historical landslides. Look at Highway 20. We're rebuilding Highway 20 again because they built them on ancient landslides. They didn't realize they were there until they really did more analysis and said, oh, those giant bridges are built on ancient landslides. Well, we have to do something different. So you're going to have all of this movement in different locations that cannot be predicted. That's another hazard that will isolate our communities from themselves. I like to show this one to show you the level of energy that these type of earthquakes will give off. So this is a comparison. So if you take the magnitude here on the left, 10, 9, 8, 7, and here on the bottom, number of earthquakes per year worldwide starts out at 1 million to 100,000, and if we get higher and higher, on average, at an 8, there's generally somewhere around 3 notable earthquakes. And then the energy equivalent. So let's take, for example, we're all familiar with the Hiroshima atomic bomb. That is somewhere around a 6.7. it gave off 123 million pounds of energy. Going a little higher, Mount St. Helens, about 123 billion. That's about an 8. And I can't pronounce that. Thank you. Volcanic eruption, way up here at 8.5. The Chilean earthquake, the largest earthquake that we've ever been able to record on our globe in history, was way up here, 1960, 123 trillion energy release. So we're going to be right up here, right about there. So this shows you about how many different types of earthquakes happen. People will tell me, oh, we heard that little 4.0, and I'm like, yeah. Carrie has my phone, but I literally, as your county emergency manager, I have a phone with me 24/7 to receive all kinds of information on your behalf. And I don't even set my little alarm thing until it gets to like 4.5. And I have it for the entire Pacific Ocean region. So from Japan, like all the way around. Because if they have an event, I want to know if we might possibly be receiving a distant tsunami on this side. Okay, so now we're ready to talk about it. We're here. That's why this gentleman is here. We want information about tsunamis. Okay, so a couple of things. We know there's 2 types of tsunamis, right? Everyone in the audience, did you know there was 2 types of tsunamis? Okay, that's why he's here. Oh, come on, clicker. Here we go. 2 types. The first one I'm going to talk about is the distant tsunami. That's caused by a subduction zone earthquake away from us. So we are the recipient of their distant tsunami. So in Japan, in 2011, they had a large-scale earthquake. They received a local tsunami on their shore. We received their distant tsunami. The closest location for us is out of the Gulf of Alaska, 4 hours away. The local tsunami is caused by our own subduction zone earthquake. Pebble hits the water raises, it comes to us on shore. That's why we have that limited time. We'll talk a little bit more. Okay, distant tsunami. It could potentially arrive 4 hours after the earthquake. Closest place, Gulf of Alaska. But I will tell you, having been in this position now for over 4 years and participated in the 2011 March 2011 tsunami, a distant tsunami should not be a life safety event at all. And I will tell you why. Once Department of Geology and Minerals redid the public evacuation maps, which are these guys right here, it broke them down into 2 different zones. So if you haven't looked at one of these, in 2011, we didn't have these maps. I think there was an understanding, but without an actual map, then you don't really have a point of reference. So these maps were put together. The orange zone indicates the distant tsunami zone. It's actually a very, very small zone. It's basically your beach ways and a certain amount of elevation if you live right at ground zero, right on the beach, and then going up your waterways or your estuaries. That's the distant tsunami zone. Your local tsunami zone is represented in the yellow. That, on these maps, are considered the worst case scenario based on the geologist information when they did the mapping. So for us to evacuate the distant tsunami zone, we have 4 hours. In March 2011, we evacuated the entire zone, both, if you will, in 3 hours. The technology that we use is your sheriff has in place a mass notification system with all the landline numbers built into the system. And then you as a citizen have the option to put in your cell phone numbers. You can monitor different addresses if you like. You could put your fax number. You can put your fax number, your email. It will text you. It will voice call. If it is a life-threatening event, we have the ability to call you right away. I have personally tested the system across the entire county at least twice. And we can make all the calls that we need to. We can activate every landline in the county in less than 90 minutes. The way we have that set up is we have all of the distant tsunami zone mapped in there so we can call them first, and then we notify the rest of the county. But there's more. Wait, there's more. So you probably have a NOAA alert radio. So if you live at ground zero, you should have a NOAA alert radio. That will give you the weekly test. It will also give you every storm surge and high wind warning, but it will give you the tsunami warnings. They also make little pocket, handheld NOAA alert radios you can put in your pocket. So if you walk on the beach a lot, you can put that in your pocket if you don't want to take your cell phone. Another system that we have is referred to as iPods, because people say, well, I only have a cell phone. How will I know that you reach me? Well, we have a system that's referred to at the federal level as iPods, Integrated Personal Warning Alert System, that gives me, the local, access to every cell phone tower in my geographical area. Based on certain conditions, I can activate that messaging system. And if you have your phone turned on, sir, and it's a newer technology phone, probably in the last 5 years, and it has the emergency alert feature, and you haven't turned it off, like if you've gotten an Amber Alert in the past, yep, you have that turned on. I, the sheriff, Carrie, anybody in our authorized group can activate that, and we will be able to put a message out to anyone with a cell phone. Yes, sir.
In a major earthquake, would those towers be...
Okay, hold on. We're not to a local event yet. We're still on distant tsunami. So distant tsunami, technology is functional. Roads are open, right? Because nothing has happened to us. We have 4 hours of warning. So we also have your public radio system, right? You have, many of you may still listen to public radio. You have the television system. We can activate the emergency alert system. Between the phone, technology, television, radio, no alerts, and then we also do door-to-door. Public safety, public works, public utilities, did this in March of 2011. We will literally go door-to-door in all of those areas. And now it's easier because before we did the entire area, now we do a slim area. Distant tsunami zone, very small, all the way through. So once we do the mass notification, public radio, public everything else, then we follow up with public safety door-to-door. So that's a distant tsunami. And you only have to go out of the distant zone. You just got to go to the other side into the next zone or the green zone, and you're out of the area. You don't have to go to the valley. You can go shopping. And then what we'll do is we'll use the same technology to let you know when it's time for a cautionary reentry. The cautionary reentry says, please wait, let us go in for public safety to determine what may or may not be damaged, then you can come back into that zone. And you have to keep in mind, if the first wave of arrival is that 4-hour mark, it may not be the biggest surge or the biggest, what you might consider a wave. It may be 3 or 4 hours after that 4-hour time period. But by then, NOAA and the National Weather Service will have given us that information. The deep water buoys out in the ocean collect that information, they analyze it, and that's how we get our tsunami warning alerts. And they tell us when the first wave of arrival is expected and at what height. But either way, we do not go back into the tsunami zone until we receive the cancellation from NOAA. And then we do a cautionary reentry. Our information comes from the Palmer, Alaska, which is now referred to as the National Tsunami Warning Center. Don't be confused. There's a Pacific Warning Center, which is in Hawaii, and they do everybody else in the Pacific Ocean, and the national one does here for us in the United States. Well, Hawaii is part of the United States too, but they are separate.
So,
he's looking.
I've been here since, I've been here since March, so this is all very interesting to me. I come from Illinois, and we don't have any oceanfront property there.
Welcome to the coast.
Thank you. I love it. It's beautiful. I have friends here that were telling me about the quake in Japan in 11, and they said go on YouTube and see about the tsunami that hit Depot Bay.
Yes.
And so I did. And I'm like, holy crap, you know. I mean, that's, 5,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And it took out some of the stuff down there, what do you call it? I can't think of the word. Yeah, the dock, thank you.
Come on. Energy.
Okay.
That's what you're looking at. That earthquake released so much energy, it can push That entire wall of water across the entire Pacific Ocean, I think it was like in 11 hours.
Okay.
That's why we're saying 123 trillion pounds of energy is coming, not coming towards us in a distant tsunami, but the event itself.
Okay. Well, all I know is that we live just east of 101, a little south of Lincoln City, and our house is at 66 feet elevation, and we are hearing things like tsunamis with so much water that...
Okay, so let me stop you.
Okay.
First thing, and let's take this off after the presentation, but the first thing you need to know is your house in the distant or local tsunami zone, according to the map? So that's the first thing you need to know. Okay, well then, so let's wait till afterwards, and I will give you the time that you need, especially as a newbie. Okay. Okay, so local tsunami, no warning. Zero. No technology, no public warning, no radio, no television, no phone, no nothing. If you feel the ground is shaking, and this is generally kind of what I tell people, a rule of thumb, especially new people or vacationers, and you can kind of do one of these numbers. I know the Pacific Ocean is behind that big, giant, beautiful house or that motel or Yaquina Bay or that water inlet or estuary. If it's like within, like, I could maybe walk to it or whatever, you're in a zone. Plain and simple, ground shaking, you move to higher ground until you know otherwise, period. And when we talk about that 15 minutes, what happens is when the Cascadia subduction zone unzips, either in the center or on either end, if it unzips in the center, that's basically where we're at. We're pretty much dead center. That means we would have the least amount of time, which is 15 minutes. So the assumption is you have about 15 minutes before that surge of energy in the form of water is moving towards shore. Now, if you're at the other end of that unzipping, you may have up to 30 minutes, but you won't know where it unzipped. Nobody will have that information until after the water is already on shore. So the rule of thumb is you have 15 minutes. And if you look behind you and you still have another 500, 800 yards to go and the water is not lapping at your feet, well, then it's a good day for you. You keep going. That is your methodology. I've got more to tell you about that. Okay, what are the implications for Oregon if Cascadia happened today? And so where'd you move from?
Illinois.
Do you still own a house there?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, so my commissioners now, and the policy groups, the legislate, I can hear them now. No, we want the voters to stay, Jenny. Okay. All right, so we know we have 3 large metropolitan areas. The reason why this is important is we know that when resources come into communities, large-scale events, that population is probably going to be fed first. However, I will tell you, more and more we're hearing that they're focusing on the smaller communities. But take that for what it is. Okay, so, sir from Illinois, so we know to expect, I'm trying not to smile about this because it's the new people you feel really bad for. So, no power for weeks, months, and years. No fuel, no deliveries of food, water, weeks and months. Okay, I'm going to maintain my composure. So no running water for weeks, months, or years. I'm going to talk about that. And no sewer systems for weeks, months, or years. So depending on where you're at in your public infrastructure. And so why does this affect us so greatly? Remember when I said Oregon is still pretty new? We're like young. We're young earthquake. The reason why is the median age of our building earthquake standards was in 1990. That's what, 24 years ago, if I've got my math right? 25 years ago? Wow, we're ahead of here. So in most of our public safety buildings, the median age for fire and supposed to say law enforcement is about 1975. We did not spell earthquake in Oregon in 1975, and barely in 1990. We were just finally, as a policy group, acknowledging we were even in an earthquake threat area. Yes, sir?
But are any of them that are built to earthquake standards capable of withstanding a 9.0 quake?
So I would say, so the question is, do we feel that new construction today would truly be able to withstand the shaking intensity of what is expected now? The answer would be to you, sir, is we anticipate that those buildings will maintain structural integrity that you would be able to evacuate the building. It's built structurally knowing that that shaking is going to happen and that it should maintain integrity to the point that you can evacuate. But even in that regard, those buildings in 1990 were built the same way. Any of these buildings are only built to a life safety standard that would allow the occupants to evacuate.
After the shaking, but not during, because if they go out during, they're going to get hit by all the falling glass.
You could, that's right. So we're going to talk about the fight or flight decision that you each will have to make. So another thing I want to point out right here, this one actually is supposed to say schools. Look at the age of our schools, which is the next slide. So the first seismic codes were adopted in Oregon in 1990. We still have over 300,000 children in schools that do not meet seismic retrofitting or that standard at all. If you happen to know Sue Graves from Lincoln County School District, I would ask you to personally thank her. If you look at some of the other communities in the coast, Seaside, for example, all 3 of their schools are sitting at ground zero at the watermark, literally at the 15 feet level. They tried to pass a local bond that would allow them the funding that they needed to relocate those schools out of that area, and it failed. Those children have to walk over a mile out of the inundation area. They have to go through little bridges that you hope maintain their integrity in order to be able to evacuate, and that's during the shaking. And they have estimated 15 minutes. Our schools, none of our schools are in the inundation area. Lincoln County School District superintendents, but Sue Graves, the safety coordinator, was the reason that was pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And many of our schools are newer, much, much newer, or have had the retrofitting. They got a grant last year. I can't remember which school it is. So Lincoln County School District, they have done their job. They have done right by our kids. Okay, another issue are roads. So I've been in many meetings with Oregon Department of Transportation. I will tell you, and this is a terminology that many of them have used when we do our big planning meetings, is Highway 101 will be obliterated. There is no consideration that it will truly be able to maintain its integrity. Now, there may be portions or patches of that highway, but it's not going to be to the point that you'll be able to truly navigate it other than perhaps an ATV or walking or not at all. But that doesn't mean that the other roads are not as affected too. They will be. Highway 20, Highway 18, 34, all of our coastal inland routes, I-5, they really anticipate you'll be able to go like this and then drop, this, drop, wherever there was an overpass or an underpass. I mean, that's literally how our navigation routes will be. Then when you consider all the trees, our forest areas, chainsaw fuel, you only have so much, you only last so long, the landslides. So the point that we're making, once again, sheltering in place, where you're at, you're going to have to develop that island methodology. Okay, Oregon Prepared. This is another graph that kind of puts it more difference in valley and coast. Electricity, you can see why we will be without electricity. Power poles, every culvert is built on some sort of sand or fill. Bonneville Power Administration, where the majority of all of our power comes from, they can't just reroute it from another location out of the area because every single line will have to be reset, retested, re-put together. The parts and things that they use for resurfacing our infrastructure for electricity, those things are very expensive. There's not a giant warehouse. There's not like a box store with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things. And plus you have to have the additional linemen to come in and help that. Restoration of electricity at the coastal level is going to be a very, very long process. They might be able to set up smaller things, 3 or 4 months, but residential customers, that's going to be a very, very long wait. Police and fire stations, we talked about that already. I think we have 4 fire stations, 2 primary stations that are actually in the inundation areas. The Glen Beach Fire Station, the Waldport Fire Station. North Lincoln Fire has, I think, the Otis Station, and the one up the Siletz River, a little substation. The Toledo Police Department in Toledo, 6 miles inland. The reason why they are affected is because the Yaquina River goes all the way up. The water will significantly surge up into that area. In the little downtown part of Toledo where the street light is, just down from that, their police station, which used to be a bank, had they realized that 15, however many years ago, they probably would have never put the police station there. But this information, this mapping information, wasn't available to them at that time. Another bummer is seismic grant retrofitting monies are not available to public infrastructure, critical, your taxpayer buildings, if it resides in an inundation area. So they can't even retrofit it to help sustain the earthquake because they're in the zone.
Well, it'd be funded anyway. So.
Well, right, yeah. Okay, drinking water and sewer. Look at the coast, 1 to 3 years. That Oregon Resiliency Plan has the assumption that there is no water municipality system on the Oregon coast that will survive, and the majority of them in the valley will be so affected that you're still looking at that 1 month to an entire year to reestablish just this primary service, let alone all the lines out to the residential type areas. Talked about the top highway priorities. I think there's only 1 or 2 highway priority highways that they are anticipating. It used to be Highway 20 when they thought Highway 20 was going to be fixed. They now have taken that off of their priority list, and I think they're pushing to, I think the highway coming across to Astoria. 18 is kind of on there, but even with that, you're still looking just weeks and months to try and get that. Healthcare facilities. We have a healthcare, Eli was here, I don't see Eli anymore. Our healthcare facilities on the coast, it's not anticipated that any of them will be able to survive. There's 11 of them. Most of them were built prior to that. Even the Newport Hospital was built in 1990, but you really just have to take that consideration, that soil sampling and the condition that it was built at. Restoration of those medical and service facilities, that's going to really have to be an augmented system. Large hospital tents will come in, like if you saw any of the pictures from Joplin, Missouri, they put up these giant portable hospitals and tents, and then evacuation out for those that are critical after a period of time. Okay, damage to homes, schools, businesses. The homes are, oh yes sir.
If water is not going to be available here on the coast for anywhere from a year or longer, don't we need 2 plans, one to shelter in place for weeks or a couple of months and then a mass evacuation? Because nobody is going to be able to live here. It's not going to be suitable for living at all. Yeah.
I would agree with you. Yeah. There's more to come.
Okay.
Oh, she has a question.
And you were talking about that the water systems in the valley might be damaged.
They will be damaged.
And so, in other words, this quake is going to go all the way across.
Yeah, so we will have the feeling of a 9.0 or greater magnitude. At the base of the Cascades, they are going to be registering at the 7 to 8 point magnitude. They will be feeling at about between 7 and 8.
So they're going to be in trouble also.
Yes, they will.
Okay. Thank you.
You will not be evacuating the Benton County, Marion County, Yamhill, Polk. You are not evacuating inland. You're not. Okay, but there are some things you can do. Now remember, we are talking about Cascadia, the worst catastrophic, doomsday, oh my gosh, this poor gentleman, he's like, oh, okay, I'm ready to just,
I'm calling the realtor in the morning.
Please don't tell that to the sheriff. But there are some things that you could do. We may not have Cascadia. We might just have a regular old earthquake. We might just have a little old 4.0 that's land-based, not even the Cascadia, because those can happen. So you still want to take preparedness efforts and mitigate what you can. And what I would show you in this Living on Shaky Ground, this is a great resource. In here on the Living on Shaky Ground, it gives you like 30 different little tips and tricks that you can do to mitigate damage to your home. And the importance of that, you need to be able to safely evacuate your home. You don't want to survive the shaking only to be injured or potentially killed because that beautiful china hutch that was grandma's that came over from Germany fell over on you and really did damage to you. You don't want to take the chance of walking across broken glass because you didn't have shoes nearby. That beautiful picture of the grandkids, love it, but secure it to the wall. You don't want that to be what injures you or takes you out. Those simple things are what kill us. Okay, preparing for island life. We talked about that. And what does that actually mean? What's that method? What's that concept? Yeah. Everywhere you look in our communities, you may be used to driving to one end of the town to the other, or you have a neighborhood type area. Everywhere you're at, you're going to have a new island because that waterway increased, the culvert gave way, the bridge gave way, that other half of the neighborhood slid off the hill. Your geographic environment is probably going to change. You will not be able to get into your vehicle and drive away. You're probably going to be able to start it. You're probably going to use your car as a great place of shelter until it feels safe to reevaluate your home or use it for shelter, or you might relocate to a sheltering type area. But the point is, you're going to be in that area for a long period of time, and that's that island life. And what you'll do is you'll reincorporate yourself into a new community. People ask me after I do these presentations, especially individuals that move from out of state, how do you sleep at night? Oh, good Lord. What have you, you must have a bunker at home. Well, I have two kids, 11 and 7. I actually live in East County, so I'm about a half away from where I live. But I sleep really well because I know that our human race is made up of survivors. We're scavengers and hunters and pilgrims, and we get it done. We will make happen what needs to happen. If you find yourself, if it was just this group of people right here and something were to happen in all of us, somebody would find naturally the leader. You would find the person that has the most healthcare experience, somebody who's an engineer, somebody who knows how to do structural stuff, somebody that's willing to cook. You, sir? Yep, he's got it right there. Yeah. Somebody that can do first aid, somebody that knows how to do clean water and sanitation. We will redevelop ourselves into a unique community just by the people that are in this new circle. Now, I may not like you. We might have a beef. We might have some of these psychological issues, but it will get worked out for the greater good. We are that type of culture of people. And eventually, resources and supplies will be coming in, but they're not going to come in right away. That's why you have to have that personal resiliency.
The question about the cascade event and the aftershock, the shaking that goes on.
Yes.
I think the question about the shaking after the cascade event, that goes on for a long time and the periodicity is rather short because of the zipping factor?
So you will have continued shaking for 4 to 6 minutes.
Okay.
Continued shaking. Then you're going to have aftershocks at a certain magnitude that will shake for a period of time. But we don't necessarily have a reference point of how long it will shake for each aftershock.
And it's the shaking that causes the liquefaction of the
Liquefaction,
ground.
yes.
Okay.
So that process is going to probably repeat over and over again with every aftershock. Maybe not to a full intensity.
And so each aftershock is less than the one before, but it goes
Not
on?
necessarily.
Not necessarily. So you have no idea of how
You
long
have no idea.
How many you're going to experience.
Correct. There's no estimation as to how many we will receive other than we think it's between this and this range of magnitude.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that first 3 days, personal readiness kits, wherever you're at, sheltering in place, waiting for the shaking to stop, and beginning to develop your plan of survival. Keep in mind, shelter and warmth, water and food, medical and sanitation. Those are your priorities. But seriously, the more you prepare yourself now and inform yourself and think about your plan, the better off you'll be. You don't want to start with a blank whiteboard of what am I going to do. You want to already pre-think that. Even if you don't buy a kit today or tomorrow or put one together, you're at least thinking about what you might need. Okay, emotional recovery. I always like to put this slide in. It's actually from one of Althea's earlier slides. But this is one of those human factors that is not stressed enough. If you find yourself in a chaotic environment, you're going to have a certain percentage of those individuals that just can't hold it together. They may not be physically wounded, but they're going to be emotionally wounded. They're going to need to do that emotional recovery. The best way to help people that's in your new island life, give them a job. Somebody take leadership. Sit with this person. That's your job. Go collect firewood. See if you can scavenge up some cooking utensils. Just give them something to do. People that are in shock or you know it's going to be a long-term event, if they just sit there, that's not healthy. We have got to be moving and active. We have to feel like we're making a progression, that something positive. I'm doing something positive for the greater of myself or for you. So this is really important. Okay, protecting your home. I talked about what's in the living on shaky ground. Some simple things. If you don't already have earthquake insurance, might want to consider that. That's your financial choice. But they're going to make sure that your house is secured to your foundation or your blocking systems. There's different things that you can do. I will warn you, make sure you look for licensed, bonded contractors. Don't just do Acme, whatever. My grandmother had a manufactured home and she did everything, and then she got her house refinanced, it reappraised. They said, well, you got to have that inspection again. And that guy said, well, your house has never been tied down. Well, sure it was. That guy went on there and gave me that piece of paper for $3,300. Make sure you second check the work they've done. If you yourself cannot crawl under your house, find somebody that can do it for you and double check their work. That is a lot of money. Don't just take it that they said they did it. Okay, hypothermia. Immediately evacuating your house, what you have in your go kit, what's in your car. Do you have a poncho, a pair of rubber boots, extra socks? We were just talking the other day with some ladies from the DA's office. We had a little county readiness fair, and I grew up in Alaska, way out in the back country, so I might be a little more resilient. But we had bread sacks. Who's ever put bread sacks on your feet? Oh, I did it all the time because our darn shoes would get all wet and Mama would tell us, hey, don't you put on them. No, I want to put on my snow boots. They'd get wet, you come back in, you want to go back out. Bread sacks are amazing. Collect, not those super cheap, some grocery store bags that are so cheap they rip, but bread sacks. Throw them in your kit. Get a whole thing of them, put them in there. You have to keep your feet dry. They might be cold, but keeping the moisture off of them. Super inexpensive things that you can do. Water and food. This is the next part we get in that personal preparedness. The word I want you to remember is to diversify. There is not one kit, one food block, one water storage thing. You want to have a diverse program. You want to have, the first thing you can do for homework is a kit in your car. You're always in your car. Your car's always near you. If you have to shelter in place because Highway 18, you guys are new, is this your first winter you're coming through? Okay, Highway 18, it likes to close. Highway 20 likes to close. You might get stuck halfway in between. You're going to have food, water, some warmth, sheltering, communication. I always ask you to put a book you've never read in your bag. A roll of toilet paper, comfort creature type things. If you have a book that you've never read, the point is to get your brain through the event. If you can get your brain through, your body's going to follow. You can live 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So another thing about water, Bruce Polvey from Electronic Superstore, he has these super cool new water filtration systems. The ones we were doing previously, you could get up to 20 gallons of water through this one little system, and then they did 30 gallons. Well, this is a newer system. You can get up to 100,000 gallons of water through this one filtration system. He's got a price tag on here. I don't know if that's his price tag, but go see how much they are. The value of having this is you can take a mud puddle, surface water, river water, no chemically contaminated and no salt water. You scoop that up, you put it in your container, you put this together, you put the straw in it, and you can drink it over and over and over and over again. Super lightweight, look at that. That's not that much to pack around. And the number 2 thing that you need to survive, you have it in here. I'd have one of those in your Go kit, and definitely have at least one of those in your house. The other thing that you should have is rain barrels, water storage barrels. Even if you're lazy and you don't rotate it every year, that's okay, right? Because you got that water filter straw. You'll just feed it right through there. Another thing to think about is just having tarps. We have beautiful rain that comes down a lot. Make yourself an open area in your yard. Stack up some garbage cans and plastic totes, and you want to have a rainwater collection point. Larger open surface. If you're just trying to collect water in a 5-gallon bucket or even one of those rain barrels, that's a storage. That's not a collection. Get those kids blow-up swimming pools that they have on sale from summer, order online. They're about 6 or 8 feet around. You can put one of those together. They have those ones that snap together. You don't even have to blow them up. Now look, you've got like a 6-foot surface to collect water that only costs you like $9.99. A tarp will cost you $5 or $10. Now you have a large surface area to collect water. Also, if we come to you and say, as your government helpers, I can bring you water, we just got it out of the creek, it's not going to be clean, and you're the only one that says, I have a filtration system, I'll take the dirty water. You just got water for your family. Here's another type of system. This 2-bucket system, it's gravity fed. You pour the water in here, it has a ceramic filter in here. Things you need to remember is it filters out cryptosporidium and giardia. Those are the 2 things locally that are going to make you sick, make you nauseous, have diarrhea. You're going to dehydrate, and you're not going to have access to medical help. You don't want to get dehydrated. But this system right here is about $50. It doesn't take up very much room in your garage. You can get 12 gallons of water per day through that. On average, you need about 1 gallon per person per day. You could stretch that out if you're pretty conservative, but for sanitation and cooking and drinking, about 1 gallon. Okay, food. Same thing. I talked about these for those that were here a few minutes before we started. These food bars, there's enough calories. This one's 2,400 calories. That one's 3,600. This will get you through for an entire day. Now, these are kind of heavy. They're like a, kind of like a dry shortbread cookie. We've tried them. They're okay. Not that expensive. You put 2 or 3 of these in the bottom of your cargo kit. You could have some in your pantry as backup. But at home, I want to see beans, rice, tuna fish, and peanut butter. And if any of you are still have kids at home, running daycare, grandkids, make sure you put things in your car that they're willing to eat, kind of to start off with. You don't want to just hand them that big old brick right in the beginning. You kind of got to ease the kids into it. But be prepared for that. You're talking about your dog. Well, there's no reason that you could not buy a few extra of these and you could use that to feed to your dog. I'd eat the dog food if I was hungry. I mean, I'm going to eat the dog, but dog food takes up a lot of space. Yeah, oh yeah, he's going to, that's right. Okay, beans, rice, meat, fish, those type of things, remember, non-thirst provoking. So, no sodium, low sodium. Do not get a whole bunch of topper on a cup of soup. I had one person said one time, oh, I got a whole case of cup of soup. No. Okay. Sanitation. We all got to go. That's not going to stop because the ground is shaking or you're living outside in the tent. You got to have a plan. Have a strategy. If you live in a nice neighborhood where people might talk to each other, do you map your neighborhood? There is a process and a little training kit that you can get for how to map your neighborhood. It talks to you about, hi, how are you? I'm so-and-so. So what did you do in your prior professional life? What's your capabilities? Do you have a generator? What's that guy? Ooh, he's got a welder, and that guy's got a chainsaw. I'm liking these people. Because you're going to be able to get stuff done. And you've mapped it out. You've met them. But in our society today, if you don't have an electronic device, I don't really want to talk to you. Meeting your neighbors at the worst case scenario, it'll work, but I don't recommend it. And if you have neighbors that are not willing to map or talk or do anything, that's okay. If you're the guy with the plan because you went around and scoped it out and figured out what would work, and they don't show up because they weren't prepared, or they're lost, or they're in shock, and you're the one that actually has a plan, well, guess whose plan's going to get implemented? Yours. And guess what? Your latrine for the community is not going to be in your backyard because you already figured out your latrine is going to be down here at the Johnson's house. They've got the biggest, nicest yard that's no longer needed, right? And generally when I have community groups, I ask them, especially the ladies that are in the office, in the audience, do you have a shovel at your house? Yeah? Do you? Did you pack one from Illinois? You brought that shovel? All right, do you ladies have shovels? Do you know how to use them? Yes. Okay, I get some nice ladies, they say, what? Harold, do we have a shovel? Yes, we have a shovel. You've never touched it. Well, a shovel is going to be one of your best friends. Think about where you're going to take care of business. You don't want it near your water source. If you still have a sewer system that might be functional, that runs away somewhere else, hopefully not to another neighborhood down the street, but you got to think about that ahead of time. Think about how you're going to do water collection. Injuries. How many of you are first aid trained? Ooh. You meet the percentages. How valuable do you think it's going to be to have at least some basic understanding besides pressure about how our body works? Do you have a sewing kit? Are you ready to use it on Harold? Because that guy didn't mitigate his house, and now he's walked across glass because he evacuated without shoes, and his feet are bleeding. Do you see where I'm going here? Mitigate what you can to protect yourself so that you will be resilient, so you will survive the event, and you will survive the aftermath, and you will get to the most important word, recovery. I made it to the other side. That's the end goal. You have to make a decision as a person. Do I want to make it to recovery? Do I evacuate that building, or does it make more sense that I am getting the heck out of here? Where we work in the county courthouse, I love my employer, but I'm in the basement of the courthouse that was built in 19 what? I will probably do everything in my power to get out of that building, but that's my choice. Each and every one of you, where you are at, when it shakes, has the personal responsibility to make your own decisions. Do not wait for someone to tell you to evacuate. Don't wait for someone to tell you to drop cover and hold on because this is the safest thing and we think that's what you should do. Be aware of your environment. Have situational awareness. Make good, sound decisions because you had a plan. Can you evacuate in the dark? Can you get out of your house in the dark? Have you practiced in the dark? When was the last time you shut all the lights off in your house and played hide and seek? You probably haven't. You could do little reflector strips on the bottom that glow in the dark. You could do tons of things. One of the things I want you to do is get first aid and CPR training. How many of you heard of the Community Emergency Response Team, CERT?
I was waiting for you to start talking about that. Because you don't have to be independently oriented to survive. That CERT program has been in existence.
The CERT program is a neighborhood concept of individuals that get a certain amount of training to help provide that neighborhood leadership. But there aren't enough CERT members that are actually trained across our communities to say that we have the right population of those individuals. When we're done, ask me about it. You can contact the city, any of your fire districts. How do I find information about community emergency response? It's about a 20-hour training session. They'll teach you things from basic first aid, how to do cribbing to get a heavy thing off of your loved one, how to do a building size up to determine if it's even safe for me to go back in, how do you really do utility shutoff, how to work as a team, how to do communication, how to triage people that have injuries if you have a whole field of people that are injured, and how do you follow command and control in leadership. It's a great nationally educational program, so it's standardized. So if you came from Illinois and you were CERT trained and you came here, it's the same. Okay, also first aid and medications. Don't feel like you have to go out and buy a super expensive first aid kit. You need the bare essentials. The basic minimums is taking care and cleaning wounds. Aspirin and such like that, sure, you can have it, but after you've used up that bottle of aspirin, what are you going to do the next week? You're going to have to learn to live without it. Now, maybe fever reduction, things like that. But the point is, get your kits down to the bare essentials of what you need to survive. Okay, so organs at risk. Yep, we get all that. I love this picture. This is absolutely one of the best porta potty examples you can get. You want something with handles, you want a good opening, it's easy, lightweight, because you're going to be moving it from place to place. You could do a tarp. I'm telling you, 5-10 days into this, you won't care. You won't care about privacy. Okay, so how do we get from where we need to be? We're trying to work on changing that cultural shift. And I'm going to jump back over to my presentation. So the Great Oregon Shakeout. We just had the Great Oregon Shakeout on October 15th. Did any of you participate? Read about it afterwards. That means we're not doing our messaging enough. We got more messaging. That's a drop, cover, and hold on exercise annually, the same day every year. They change the time based on what the date actually is. It's basically the entire Pacific Northwest, California, Montana, Idaho, Alaska, Hawaii. Everybody does the Great Shakeout on the same day and same time. Okay, that's Althea's information. Let me jump over to my presentation. Oh, it worked. Okay, so we have some other personal and family readiness brochures are here. Any of your city or fire stations, they have the same information. You can always contact me. I've got the Citizen Alert mass notification systems for the Sheriff's Office here, and it's got our contact information on it. You can go to ready.gov. They have probably the best centralized information points for family, personal, business preparedness. But the one thing I didn't put in here, and you don't traditionally see in these slides, and this gentleman talked about relocation and evacuation, is also your financial recovery. I would strongly encourage you, many of you are those experienced age group, to make sure that you protect yourself financially if you find the option that you do get to evacuate. And I will tell you, at a high federal level, we are not seeing or hearing communication plans or strategies about how to relocate communities. It is not being talked about. I think it is so overwhelming, the response that it will be, because it will be an international response. Those of us on the coast, most of our resources are probably going to come from international resources, that they just haven't really figured out what that will look like. When you drive along Lincoln County or anywhere else, count the number of freight trucks that you see that come and go. Our entire community is built in a just-in-time supply train. The healthcare facilities don't have a giant warehouse of medical supplies to get them through for a couple of weeks. They get resupplied every single week. Your local grocery stores, they don't have a giant warehouse in the back. Same thing. You see those trucks come in and the stuff goes right out to the shelf and the truck leaves. Once again, we will become an isolated community. The only way that resources are going to be coming to us on the coast will be from air, helicopters. There are not enough helicopters to service all of our coastal communities from Seattle all the way down to California. Our one Newport airport has had a lot of retrofitting, if you will, to the infrastructure of its runways, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be able to survive that type of an event. But helicopters landing there, yes, we anticipate we should have a large capability to do that. But people are not going to be evacuated from helicopters. The only way that we would see a large evacuation would be from shore to ship and then to some other location to a receiving facility. But even with that, that's going to be a long time coming. But the financial piece I would give you is make sure you have someone outside of the area that has your information. You're not going to be able to take a big giant file box with all your retirement information. You could do jump drives. They have one. I have one for work. It's password protected. Somebody tries 10 times, it deletes everything. It went through the washer and dryer. It worked. They're a little spendy. Ask your bank if they have an electronic safety deposit box where you could upload your important documents electronically. So electronic safety deposit box, only some of them have them. You could even contract with an attorney outside of the area, pay a small retainer, let them hold your information. If you get a call from me at a FEMA receiving facility in Los Angeles and I give you my passcode that says, get me a ticket out of here now, he's on retainer, he or she is on retainer, they can make that happen. They'll have all of your information. You can get to your retirement information. If you're still at a working age where you need to go to work as a teacher, as a welder, as a professional, how are you going to get your certificates? You're not going to be able to pack them with you. Determine what's most important to you and find a way to package that up so you can take it with you or have it somewhere else on the other side.
From our finances, I was told that you should keep at least $100 in 5s and 10s.
Yes, small bills, absolutely.
At your ready,
yep.
If something like
yes,
this.
You should always have, and it's not just for large-scale catastrophic events. We could have a very significant winter weather event that takes our public power down for many, many days, and the grocery stores would love to sell you a gallon of milk, but they're not going to write an IOU. So you need to always have small bills on hand. I call it my garage sale money. Let's take the garage sale money. Okay, almost done here. This is a great resource called Prepare in a Year. It's on the Sheriff's Office website. We don't provide copies of it because it's about 15 pages long, but it has 12 different steps that you can go through. Action plan, out-of-area contact water, your 72-hour kit, important documents, extended events, all the way through these things. So maybe you do one activity a month. You could be a fast tracker and do them all in 10 days or one a week. This is a great resource, tells you how to do things. You can download that, look it online, just go to the Sheriff's Department, Emergency Management. I think it's down in the document section, or call us, and Carrie and I will get you whatever you need. So just to reiterate, you need to have a family plan. Think about it ahead of time. Even if you don't put it in writing, talk about it. Let your family know. I had a conversation with my daughter, Jamie, who's 11, and my son the other day, and we just really walked through what would happen if you're at Newport Middle School and I'm at the county building? Would you come to me first, or would you go to the school where your brother is and get him? Because my daughter's pretty mature. And so we made a deal. If you feel like the adults at the school have their act together, and believe me, she understands what that means, if they have their act together and you feel safe, you stay there. If you don't feel like the adults have got it together, I want you to leave. Go to the other school and see if they have their act together. If they don't have their act together, you get your brother and you both leave and you make your way to the courthouse. You tell them you're Jenny Damaris's kid and they will find me, and if I'm still there and I'm living, they will be incorporated into our public employee family of response. So those conversations need to be had ahead of time. Same thing with between the two of you. What would we do? You want the expectation that I'm only going to leave this area if this happens. You should know where to find me.
I've attended a lot of, or several, of these preparedness talks. Most of them Jim held from the fire department. You haven't mentioned for instance, you mentioned the idea that there will be islands, obviously, and they're actually planned for. I mean, our emergency preparedness people kind of have sketched out where those islands are going to be. There are storehouses currently being built, water supplies. Not enough for everybody, and I think it's very important that we stress and that you stress our individual responsibility, but you haven't mentioned what our towns and our cities have been doing in terms of emergency preparedness. In fact, building these storehouses and places where food and water, shelter.
But I don't think they have, sir. I don't think. The school district, Lincoln County School District and their partners put together these disaster supply caches.
Yeah.
But there's only enough there for maybe 3,300 people for maybe 3 days.
But I think that has to happen more.
Oh, I agree with you. But
the same thing with CERT. I think that has to happen
No,
more.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm telling you how it is right now today.
Right. Okay.
Each one of those disaster supply caches the school put together is about $16,000. We can't even get neighborhood groups to come together to put neighborhood association caches together. Very few of them actually have done that. I absolutely agree with you that those caches should be put in place.
Sure. Take Coronado Shores.
Right.
They've got one going, and I think that's a great example that has to be, shown to others.
Right.
Right here in Lincoln City, Indian Shores, that's a neighborhood that could do that kind of thing.
And that's where this map your neighborhood and your neighborhood planning starts.
Right.
That's what this process is all about. Map your neighborhood. What are our resources? What do we need? What are our gaps? How do we feel we will be isolated? That is that neighborhood planning.
And in terms of isolation, I've heard talks about how the emergency planners are planning nodular communications systems that don't depend upon wires and use ham radios. There's a lot of that CERT, community emergency response concept. I just find that as a parallel effort that's important to put into place. Not that it's right now, it's a nascent thing now, but it's going, it's moving, and I see it, and I've heard it when I've gone to these other presentations.
Yes, CERT is absolutely important, and more people should get the CERT training and volunteer to be CERT trained and develop that neighborhood part. But my talk is 100%, I've made you aware of what your vulnerability and your threats are. You have to be personally resilient. You can be a part of a CERT group. The American Red Cross has got great training. You can be a sheriff's office search and rescue. There are many opportunities to increase your personal knowledge and your neighborhood association, all of those things. That actually augments the greater good. But ultimately, if each of you don't take that personal resiliency, then you will be dependent on someone else or another community group to be able to provide that for you. But I agree, the community neighborhoods and the groups, I mean, I work with the CERT groups all the time. I put in a Homeland Security grant for them, intentionally for them to get 58 more kits. I work with them, and that's a big part. However, this is your personal responsibility. So this is a ham radio communications, as he just alluded to. All of our public safety infrastructure for communications, landlines, cell phones, everything will probably be non-functional for a long period of time. But we know ham radio or amateur radio will be the primary resource for communications between communities and to the state. I'm also now working with the fishing industry to develop a redundant communication strategy out in the marine world from ship to shore, from city to city to city, as a backup to augment ham radio. I only have 50 ham radio volunteers in the county. Now, there may be more people that are licensed, but in our resource pool for that's only 50 out of a population of 46,000. Even CERT members, I will tell you today, if you were to provide me with that active member list, I bet you right now today we don't have more than 300 people that are active CERT members out of a population of 46,000. More people need to get trained and volunteer. The American Red Cross group, you've probably seen the newspaper articles over the last year. They've shut the office. Their volunteer group has actually aged to the point where they've all completely expired. Retired, pardon me. Oh my gosh. That was a Freudian slip. I'm so sorry. So they have. That American Red Cross group has just completely retired out of volunteerism, and there's not a younger generation coming up into that. But if you didn't know, the Lincoln County School District, once again, good kudos to them, they have teen CERT groups in, I think, 3 of their high schools. So building that, I don't understand why we don't make it mandatory that every child has first aid and CPR before they graduate. Now, they may get a health class first aid, but are they really getting a comprehensive? We need to build that generation of people that understand emergency preparedness and what it's going to take to be personally resilient.
Speaking of expiring, a lot of us are not going to survive the earthquake. So we'll be in these isolated islands. What do we do with the dead? Are there practical tips on what's the best way to handle that? Because we won't have the time or the energy to bury them.
Lots of coffee. So I will tell you, if you happen to read the Board of Commissioners meetings lately, we are putting forth our first and only mass fatality plan that the county has actually ever had. However, it only takes the plan to so far. I've been working with the state to get them to validate what is it that the state wants us to do when we have to bury our loved ones where we find them. I have yet to fully get that instruction card.
I lived in the Bay Area for a while, and we did have earthquake training there. And you were told that if there are fatalities in your building and your building survives the earthquake, put them up on the top floor and break out all the windows. And then you stay on the lower floors, but you get...
And I would have no point of reference to validate if that's a good process or not. And we don't have that many multi-story buildings. That probably won't be structurally not sound. Okay, so if you didn't see here, I just want to talk one more time. Water is the most important thing. Make sure you have the ability to purify water or have backup water supplies for yourself. This is the last thing. And Kay Wyatt from the Depot Bay CERT and Sue Graves are the two people that keep enforcing this idea. And your takeaway, besides your car kit, when you go home tonight, think about what you should have in your bag next to your bed. That's truly where you're most vulnerable. You're asleep, you're not quite awake, you don't have your glasses on, you feel like you want to get out of the house immediately after the shaking, you want to stay in your bed during the shaking unless you have some giant artwork up above. You have to keep in mind that your bed, the nightstand, everything is going to be moving. So if you put your glasses in a nightstand, you're not going to be able to get them because they're going to be over there. You're going to lose power. You're going to be in the dark. What you need in that bag is a headlamp, extra pair of glasses, a good sturdy pair of shoes, and for heaven's sakes, put a poncho in there. The headlamp. Yeah, you want your hands free. You don't want to be using your hands for a flashlight. I mean, you can do it, but really, ideally, have a headlamp. And then that way you'll have your feet protected, the hypothermia. If your car is not parked in a garage, you know you've got a kid in there. Maybe you have a hide key. You have a way to get into your car. You should have 3 days of food and water and sheltering inside your car at a minimum to get you through that aftershock period. When daylight comes, you can evaluate the building and try and start, excavating things out of your building that you can use. And that's the point. You've got to protect yourself at the very moment the event begins so that you can make it all the way through. Okay, another good thing, tarps, love tarps. Every national event that we see on national coverage and video footage, what's the common theme? Blue tarps. You can pick green ones, red ones. But the point is, tarps. Plastic sheeting. Maybe it's a moderate earthquake and it's not a significant one. Maybe you just have some broken windows or part of your roof. You don't want to wait for a contractor. By the time you get to the hardware store, they're already bought out. It doesn't cost that much. One every couple months, buy a big tarp, some little tarps. Duct tape only works when conditions are dry, if you didn't know that. You might buy some of that lath wooding, they're like the 1-inch strips of wood. Have a little stack of those, like 10 or 15 of those sitting in your garage outside. If you have to take a tarp or plastic sheeting and maybe nail it up here or nail it to your roof, you want to have that lath wood already ready to go in some short, roofing nails. Not expensive. L brackets that you put on your bookcases or different things, they're like 97 cents, really inexpensive things you can do to mitigate. Practice. Always encourage you to practice your tsunami walk if you live in the inundation area with the lights turned off. Maybe get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. The time is going to change pretty soon. Can you make it where you need to make it in the dark? We talked about emotional recovery. It's so important to make sure that we're all in this together. We can survive. We are a community of survivors. And I ask you at the end, will your behavior change Do you know how to get a hold of the mass notification system to sign up for that? Prevention and mitigation actions, duck cover and hold on, practice, have that communication plan with loved ones on the outside so everybody's calling to the same place, gathering your supplies, and building that community capacity through resiliency, through volunteering. The more people that are trained, the better we'll be. Okay, so are you better informed? Will you do anything different? And is there more that we can do for you? This is the first time that we've done this presentation. I know Jim Coos and other people do things. We did this presentation last year at the County Readiness Fair, and we're here, and then we're doing it again in Lincoln City in the smaller communities, but then it's, should we do these more often? How do we get the word out? And I know that Lincoln City is videotaping this today. It might be worth watching again. And the OPB broadcast, I mean, all those things you see, everything you see and read will help build that knowledge base. But the bare minimum, food, water, shelter, and a plan. Questions?
I would just repeat that I think it's important during this presentation that you motivate the people that are sitting here to get out and get to their representatives, state, local level, and say, what are you doing? What kind of plans are you putting in place for communication, water, medical, whatever? Because I'm doing what I can for my family. And I think that also there has to be an attempt to say, here are the places to contact. This is your emergency department for Lincoln County or Lincoln City. And that's the phone number. And this is where you go to find out what they're doing.
Right.
What do they have in place? And I know they all are trying in one way or another, and I'm not trying to say that they're anywhere near it.
Right.
But I think that all of us are responsible also to say, what can I do?
Right.
What can we do as a community? I think that this discussion is too self-oriented and not enough oriented towards what we can do to build our community awareness and our community resources to get the kind of funding that you say is not available. How do you go about it? Dave Gomberg's a very pleasant guy.
Yep.
And he listens.
Yep.
So who's going to, what are the resources that we have to improve our infrastructure and our emergency services, as well as do what you say? And that's what's missing from this presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would just, one of the things that all of you can do is give any of us ideas about how to get those that aren't here to be part of the discussion, whether it's through church groups or neighborhoods or whatever, but we're always open for any ideas about how to reach people.
And I'm willing to come to do neighborhood presentations. You know, I have to do a larger group such as this, and then even though Mark is your city emergency management representative, but just knowing how few of us are actually out there. Right now, Mark is the only city individual in our county that has designated labor hours towards emergency preparedness. Everyone else is, other duties as assigned. My position, even though it's full-time, I'm grant-funded. There's basically almost every emergency manager in the state is a grant-funded position because they know locally it's not going to get paid for. And Carrie's position is also grant-funded. What we did in Lincoln County, which we're only one now of only 2 counties in the state, we merged our public health emergency preparedness program together with county emergency management. And so that's how Carrie came. I have both responsibilities, and then she's on the assistant role. The other county, I think it's Harney County, did it because they couldn't afford to have 2 people. We're a very, very progressive county. I was just at the Veterans House Administration Emergency Preparedness Committee, and I spoke about our coastal issues and what we have. You can ask Carrie. I am one of the most outspoken emergency managers out of all 36 counties. You may not realize it, but I go to bat for you guys at I was at a national conference, and the number 2 FEMA individual for the entire nation was one of the first speakers up. And I was in a room of like 3,000 of my peers, this gigantic room. And I got up to the speaker, just second in line, and I asked that individual, hey, did you even understand what Cascadia is or how it's going to unzip? And what was the percentage of what you thought the international response was going to be? I cannot get anyone at a higher level of government to even begin to talk about relocation strategies. I have strategies as your county emergency manager and your sheriff, but we can only go so far. And I'm pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and your coastal emergency managers are. We are, but changing, just like these are, these nice presentations, that cultural shift change. Right, but us at the local levels pushing and pushing and saying, we are your customer and we're not satisfied, we want you to do more. If you didn't know, FEMA's doing a multi-state regional exercise, Washington and Oregon, Cascadia Rising, June 7th through 10th, a 4-day full-scale exercise. Out of our 6-county region that we're in, Lincoln, Polk, Yamhill, Marion, Lynn, and Benton, Marion and Lincoln County are the only ones that are participating. And what we do for you in your sheriff's office, and the public safety people, I'm not kidding you, your public safety people that you have in this county is unlike any other county in the state. I hear it over and over and over again. How do you get your fire chiefs to do that? They mean they're going to do that? Well, we have multiple. We have 8 districts. Your 3 board of commissioners, because when I came on board, I said, well, you guys need to do this 300 and 400 training, which I understand you guys don't know what that means, but it's fairly significant. Most people say, well, why would you want your board of commissioner in your emergency operations center? I said, why wouldn't I want them in my emergency operations center? Because if I don't live through that event, they are the line of succession. They are the ones, they are the elected individuals that will make the decision. And if they don't know how to order resources when I don't survive, you won't survive. We are one of the most progressive counties anywhere. You have no idea how lucky you are. Oh, absolutely. We call ourselves Team Lincoln County. If you go anywhere else in the state, we took 18 people back to Maryland. One of your county commissioners went to the FEMA training. Wherever we go, you can ask those other public people out there. They know we collectively speak with one voice. We are Team Lincoln County. It doesn't matter if you're fire, law enforcement, CERT, public health, the hospital. Eli was here earlier, Mark, the natural hazards planning team. We are collectively Team Lincoln County. You are in the best county to be in. This was the best county to move to. We truly are.
Well, I watch TV probably too much because I'm retired. And I see on CBS Good Morning, or whatever the show is in the morning, about what FEMA said a couple of months ago, and I guess it came from the New Yorker thing about everything west of I-5 is going to be toast.
I like English muffins myself.
But, I mean, I guess my question to you is, would FEMA even be here to help us?
So you have to, this is the part, and so the last thing, I know some of you are ready to leave, but here's what I would leave you with. As this gentleman said about volunteering, if you had any concept of what Carrie and I tried to accomplish with just 2 FTEs, if you're ever interested in volunteering and you had a professional career and you are administrative or you know how to do things or you want to do project management, you're good about talking about things or putting things together, come volunteer for our office. We have a new lady, Judy McNeil, who's one of our retired pharmacists. That lady is just going to town on just organizing all of these outreach materials and doing an inventory in our props, and then we're moving to this, and then we're moving to that. I have damage assessment team concepts that need to be worked on. There's a lot to do which can be helped by those that are interested.
Is your card here?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And it's fun. We do fun stuff. I can sell you anything.
We have time.
Then you want to be with me?
You know, we can help.
She might be moving.
As long as we're here.
Yeah. So anyways, yes, FEMA is doing things. They will be the ones that put the machine in motion. The military is going to be the logistics machine that moves everything that we need to move, and they will eventually be, to a certain extent, the command and control of how those processes work. But the FEMA part will be there. We can't function in a response mode without them. That's how the machine works. And then we will have an international response because it will be. And the word toast, if you were to take someone on the East Coast or somewhere here, to them, this would be toast. I mean, oh my gosh, you mean Aunt Martha can't flush her toilet for more than a day? I'm out. Okay, it's relative to their experience. It's relative to their daily environment. If you were to take the people in Sandy and you told us that that event could potentially happen to them, we would say, well, that's toast. My gosh, you people can't survive that. Nothing, you're toast. So it's all relative from where you are, what your personal experiences are, or what your knowledge base is. But those that live here now in this scenario, that's not toast. That's going to be pretty awful. But by golly, we're going to make it. Yes, ma'am.
We actually moved here from Illinois, but we both lived most of our lives in St. Louis, which is on the new Madrid fault.
Yes, they're the new babies of earthquake.
And nothing back there is built earthquake safe. Nothing. It's going to be interesting.
Yes, it will be. Anyways, thank you all very much for coming. Please pass the word. And if you want more presentations, then let us know, and we will try to coordinate more.
And again, I'm Mark. This is Sarah. I didn't get her introduced before because she wasn't here at the very beginning. But Sarah Smaldone is an AmeriCorps member that works with me. We're right down the hall. Stop in.
A little east of 101. I mean, by not even a quarter.
Okay, let's move so these guys can get up to the table.
Do you have a shopping list of where to get stuff?
Where to get stuff? Well, not necessarily. I would tell you go to Bruce Polvey Electronic Superstore, local vendor. Yeah. Oh yeah. Bruce Polvey Electronic Superstore. He can order any and all of it. He's pretty much the only vendor in the county that will sell things right. He gets good prices. Go see him.
Water buckets and things like that.
He can get you things like the water buckets, or you can get those online.
So, I'm sorry, how many of these may we take, or not, of each one, of each?
Oh, you take like 4 or 5. And if you need more for a whole neighborhood association, then call us and we can probably hook you up.
Okay, no, I'm just thinking about me right now to start, but then
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.